Hey, sorry guys, we were having a minor disagreement, and it took a while to resolve. He's not going to want to sit here on the camera, so he's going to be next to me, but I'll have him pop up every now and then. I don't like the lights when they're too bright when I'm on the couch streaming every now and then, so I'm probably going to turn the camera off, but, I'll pop back up, my face back up every now and then so you can see the dog, but he doesn't like to sit right here. Also, I've been chasing him around the house, which you can see because my face matches my shirt, which means I did any cardio at all today. All right. You want to go down there? Okay. There you go. All right. You guys have to tell me if this mic is working. If not, I just need to know so I can adjust it before we get started reading. Yes, the dog's name is Butter. He usually hangs out with my parents, who live just a couple minutes away from me. But they are out of town in Europe for some conference. My mom does hypnosis stuff. My dad works with her. They're both in psych. So, and my birthday is on Monday. And I'm like, everybody left me on my birthday. So I wanted to have the dog. So he's going to be here for the next few days of streaming at least. Why does Andy Signor seem so guilty in his latest videos? He doesn't, but to each their own, I guess. I disagree. I know Andy, he's a good guy. I participated in his documentary. There's nothing nefarious there, so I think anybody who feels that Andy is guilty is absolutely out of their mind, but that's just my opinion. So I can't tell you what to think. I'm not the thought police, but I will tell you he's my friend. I think he's a decent person, and I don't really care what anyone else thinks. So, all right. He doesn't love it. That's correct. Yeah. All right. So let me pull up this 56.1 document, which is what I want to go through with you guys and show some of the exhibits and stuff to coincide with it. But I started reading this the night that the motion for summary judgment came out. I did not get to finish reading it because I had Elsie and Perez and Cassidy all come in. We were just talking, and then, the actual thing came out. So, does anyone else hear skipping? I don't know. I can try to fuck with the mic a little bit. But if most of you guys are hearing skipping, I'll try to fuck with it. Otherwise, I don't know how to. It could be the dog also. So there's that. All right. Let me pull up this document real quick. Okay, cool. I didn't know you had Perez in here. It was brief. Yeah, it was brief because we had him in here, and then he noticed that he was named in one of the documents we were reading, and he was like, "Oh God, I have to, I have to go." So it was really funny. He was only here for like 5-10 minutes, but anyways, I had never had him before, so it was nice. Okay. Anyways, so I went through and did some highlights on this, and I was looking for a specific document. So that's why I was searching the word "sexy," And so we're going to skim through this. Some of it I'm not going to spend too much time on because we've really seen and heard all of it a ton at this point. But there were some things that I wanted to highlight and just go over in regards to the new exhibits and stuff that came out. Okay. What's going on with Andy? Andy's still unfortunately fighting Blake in court. I don't want to say too much because I think that there's more probably going on than we know. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to all of that, so I'll wait and hear what he has to say about it. But that's it. He has to go back to court again. So, all right. Hopefully, this is good enough to big enough to read. If not, I can zoom in here a little bit. Yeah, that should be better. Okay. So the book, one of the points they were making, and this is not the motion for summary judgment. This is the 56.1 statement, which is just a list of facts that are, I don't know if undisputed is the word. Yeah, undisputed material facts. So let me run back here real quick. So one of the things they were pointing out was the book, It Ends With Us, was well known for sexual content. And you can see that came out in NGG and Nettie's deposition. And she is a representative for Sony who was working on this project with them. One of the themes you're going to see in all this is that Sony were the ones asking for more sexual content. By the way, is me your wife one of your wives? Yeah, that could be anyone, bro. I'm gonna need you to be more specific. Yeah, so one of the themes is that Sony was asking for a rated R movie. And I don't know if I'm going to pull up that specific exhibit because I'm going to do another stream probably tomorrow night going over the actual exhibits. I just wanted to go over this document tonight. Sony asked for a rated R movie, and they described it as they wanted like really hot like sex scenes and stuff like that. They said they didn't know if Colleen and the readers would be okay with the PG-13 movie of the book. So, that is something that I feel like is some important context given what's being alleged in this lawsuit. Blake was or should have been well aware of what she was signing up for, and yet she acted like along the way that the sex scenes and stuff were gratuitous, I believe was one of the words she used in her original lawsuit, that it was somehow gratuitous for him to, try to add different things into the sex scenes, which Sony ultimately asked for. And she knew that. She knew that because they had meetings about it. So, all right. Let's see. Lively worked to revise the script before filming began. Her written work product included frank sexual language and overtly sexual themes. For instance, in April 2023, Lively sent Baldoni a revised draft for the scene in which Lively's character, Lily, and Baldoni's character, Ryle, first meet on the rooftop of the building. Lively explained she revised the scene to include, and there's some redacted stuff here, unfortunately, that we're not going to be able to see. As to whether or not that remains redacted, we're going to have to wait a little while and find out. But Baldoni sent Lively some notes on the script from Sony executive Angie Giannetti, who wanted the scenes to involve more than just verbal interplay. Giannetti wrote, and then, of course, that's redacted. So talking about this here, the rooftop scene, we later learned that, well, at least Blake and Ryan said this in the press at some point, which was a shock to the writers and to the people working on the film, that Ryan had apparently been the one to rewrite the scene, which apparently he did that during the writer's strike, which was a problem. So, yeah. Anyways, my image here is kind of covering some of that. Let me move my... Yeah, there we go. So you guys can see the page. All right. And by the way, that rooftop scene, like I've watched this a couple times because I watched it by myself and then I watched it with someone who really wanted to watch it. It's a creepy scene, in my opinion. If you guys watched the movie, the rooftop scene, it wasn't even that the acting was bad. I wouldn't even say that he was a terrible actor in that scene. I would say the lines they gave him were so fucking cringy. Like his best line there that he's trying to pick her up with is, "I want to have sex with you." I'm like, that is, whoa. First of all, if I just met this dude on a rooftop, I mean, I'm not in college anymore, so, I might have gone for it before, but, if I just met this person on a rooftop, and they come out with, "I want to have sex with you," I'm probably going to leave. So, especially if it's just the two of you, that's creepy. Like, there was just no, like, I didn't feel like it was really, there was no, like, sexual tension there so much as, like, awkwardness. And, like, why would you say that? But, yeah. The rooftop scene was total cringe. I agree. If you haven't watched the movie, just go watch the rooftop scene. Just so you guys know what we're talking about, because that was a whole pivotal scene in this lawsuit. And it's cringy as fuck. I'm like, there's no way anybody but a straight dude wrote this. So it actually makes sense that Ryan wrote that. But still, like, you got to do better than that. But yeah, expat being a cunt about Guinness products placement. Yeah, so I saw Justin said something about his dad, Sam, very nice guy. They both work in the industry. That his dad, Sam, did something with product placement, and that was somehow like a hypocritical because they were, not super hype. People were not super hype about Blake self-promoting her alcohol brand during promotion for this domestic violence film. First of all, if you're filming a movie and you're doing product placement, it's not their product, right? They're doing product placement for a bar scene, and Guinness is one of the products they need to place. It's a totally different scenario. It's a bar scene within the movie. They're not going out there and being like, "Hey, domestic violence survivors, drink my beer." You know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. I try not to pay too much mind to that guy. I know that I've seen this comment a lot on my posts and in my videos and stuff lately, because he's an extra special fan of mine. I guess. But I got to tell you, that guy just has no clue what he's talking about. So it's really not worth paying too much mind to what he says. I'm not, like I said, I'm not the thought police. So he's allowed to have his opinions and be as loud and as stupid as he wants to be. You got to just let him. I would say just ignore him at this point. He clearly has no idea what he's talking about to an embarrassing degree. So I would just let him talk shit. So, all right. Anyways, we're going to move on from that. Lively immediately exercised substantial influence over the development and shooting of the film. At Lively's request, Wayfarer agreed to abandon its intended filming location, Boston, where Hoover's novel was set, and to accept Lively's choice of New Jersey to accommodate Blake. So that just shows you early on where the actual power balance was here. So, all right. And is that document big enough for you guys to read, or do I need to zoom in more? Just tell me. All right. Okay. Like I said, lots of redactions here. I'll be interested to see what's being said when we can find out, but it's not going to happen tonight. Lively has since disclosed, like I said, that her husband, Ryan Reynolds, actually wrote the revisions to the rooftop scene that she proposed. Okay. And this was kind of interesting to me. Defendants took steps to create a safe set prior to filming. Wayfarer has a set of industry standard policies and procedures in place to prevent harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. That's not surprising, right? Wayfarer has a complaint process to address alleged instances of harassment, so that's not surprising. Wayfarer has an HR department. That's not surprising. What was surprising was something down here about the documents that they have when they were giving out the call sheets, and they were giving out like the stuff they give out every day. And I can't remember which number it was here, but they were saying they included a number to a third party where you could report any kind of harassment or concerns, like harassment or uncomfortable situations on the set that you were having. So like everybody, every single day got a sheet with a number on it telling them how to report any sort of issues, and yet she chose not to do so, right? Okay. Lively was under no obligation to engage in any nude or simulated sex scenes without her consent. The offer letter provided that Lively would not perform any nudity/simulated sex without her prior written consent and negotiation/execution of a formal nudity rider. Okay. Baldoni reported to the production team, seems Lively doesn't want to meet with the intimacy coordinator. So that's something I wanted to kind of point out again. I think that's something that's been kind of forgotten in all of this, is that they did actually have an intimacy coordinator. They made a genuine effort to get her to meet with the intimacy coordinator. She said no. So, okay, I'll let me pop this in a little bit. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. That's too close. Let's see. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. You can zoom in yourself. Yeah. Is this good? All right. So Alex Sachs, one of the film's producers, responded, "That's fine. If Lively doesn't want to meet the intimacy coordinator now, you'll just have to walk her through what you and the intimacy coordinator are thinking." On May 4th, 2023, before any filming had begun and months before any shooting of the film's intimate scenes would take place, the intimacy coordinator considered the content of anticipated intimate scenes and suggested details and clarifications to both Baldoni and Heath. While expressing concern that the scenes were becoming too PG-13 as compared to the more explicit scenes in the book, Baldoni suggested that the intimacy coordinator discussed with Lively whether there were other ways of implying nudity that she would consider so as not to disappoint readers while also expressing sensitivity for Lively's boundaries. So he's getting this pressure from Sony to have like R-rated sex scenes, to have like really explicit sex scenes. And he's trying to find a way, while his co-star is refusing to meet with the intimacy coordinator, he's trying to find a way to stay true to the source material in a way that will make Sony happy, the readers of the book happy, who are going to be the primary, target audience for the film, because the book had like a pretty big following. Going to make the target audience who haven't read the book happy, because it's going to be, let's be honest, mostly women. And he wants to make everybody happy, and he needs his co-star's help to work with the intimacy coordinator to do that in a way that she's going to be comfortable. And she said, nah. Okay. She would not meet with them. All cast and crew were provided daily call sheets on the evening before each day of filming, and this is what I was talking about a minute ago, which included a hotline number for workplace complaints, including sexual harassment, that directed them to a third-party organization to assist with any complaints. Did she ever exercise that? No, she did not. Okay. No intimate scenes involving Lively were shot in the first phase of filming, and we're getting to like where they're talking about how there were no incidents brought up in that first phase of filming before the writer's strike and all that. But then they, got into this position where she was making these demands before going back to filming. So none of Lively's sexually explicit scenes or scenes involving simulated nudity were rehearsed or filmed during this initial period. Those scenes were rehearsed and filmed during a later phase of filming without issue or incident. Lively claims the birthing scene constituted an intimate scene because there was implied nudity. Footage of the birthing scene shows Lively covered with a hospital gown and a prosthetic pregnancy belly. So remember when Blake said that she was like barely covered at all, and it was like a terrible experience for her. And then the actor Adam Monshine, who played the doctor, the OB, whatever he was in that scene, came out and said, that's not true. This is kind of what they're talking about, I believe, the birthing scene. So, all right. And I'll bring up that link in a little bit because I highlighted another part where I want to pull that up. But okay. And then here they're talking about Isabella Ferrer, her experience on the sets. We saw footage in the MSJ, attached to the MSJ, that showed her like trying to hug him and having a great time. And she messaged him, "You are such a wonderful, smart, sincere director, and you created such a comfortable, safe space for me to feel like I could fully step into this role. I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming environment. It will stay with me for the rest of my life." Nobody prompted or forced her to send him that text message. There was no reason she would send him that unless she felt that way. Okay, and then Blake Lively poisons the cast, gets everyone to unfollow Justin, says that she's been harassed in some way. And then you find out several months later, in the midst of all this, Blake subpoenaed her. She cooperated. Then when Justin tries to send a subpoena because he needs different information or, something they don't have, she decides to go to the media and say, "They're harassing me with a subpoena." Like, these people are toxic. All right. Let's check on Butter here. What you doing, buddy? Oh, he's sleepy. Well, if he gets up, I'll show him to you again in a minute. Anyways. Okay. All of the incidents Lively raises occurred during or before the first phase of filming. In her Second Amendment complaint and deposition testimony, Lively points to various alleged incidents prior to or during this first phase of filming, which she alleges amounted to sexual harassment and contributed to a hostile work environment. Okay. And here they're talking about Justin's comments at the initial meeting. And then his so one of the issues she was having was his private inquiry to the trainer about her weight for a scene. And we've heard about this a lot, so I don't want to get too much into the weeds here. Also, we went over the text the other day, but Baldoni privately asked a personal trainer he had consulted with, who was working separately with Lively, what Lively would weigh when filming began. Baldoni, who suffers from chronic back issues, asked in anticipation of a scene in which he was expected to lift her. Baldoni never made the same comment in Lively's presence or in the presence of any cast or crew member. Okay. And we'll go through his deposition transcripts, or what we have of it, another day, probably tomorrow night, but not tonight. The trainer, acting on his own, decided to share the comment with Lively. There was no reason to do that. Like, you suck, dude. Reynolds chastised Baldoni for commenting on a woman's weight, and that came up later. Okay. And then we have this poster from the Bushbirds I wanted to pull up here. And these are cool guys. But they were talking about Justin was privately discussing. It is disgusting though. The trauma he experienced at the hands of Ryan and Blake, He never thought the public would read these texts, but here we are. And then these are from some of the exhibits. He's talking to Rainn Wilson, he played Dwight on The Office. He was also in The Meg and a bunch of other stuff, but Justin is a good friend of Rainn's, and so they were talking here. Justin says, "Sorry for not giving an update. Last night was one of the hardest nights of my life." And he's talking about how he was berated by Ryan for 5 or 6 hours. "It's hard to describe what happened exactly. The only way to describe it was an ambush. I had no words. I couldn't formulate sentences. My brain was trying to defend itself when they were needing me to apologize for all of the ways I have fucked up and made her feel unsafe." And he was, remember, ambushed by this, and he's confused because he's like, I never did anything to make her feel unsafe. And he felt so sad and so self-deprecating in those moments. And if you've ever been in a situation where you were really gaslit, this hits hard, right? If you've ever been in a situation where you feel like you were doing everything right, but then somebody comes back and says, no, you're the problem because I don't like XYZ. Like, ugh. So gross, man. It's so gross. Anyways, let me finish reading their post. If you guys don't follow the Bushbirds here on YouTube, please do. They're great people. Michelle or Christina, if you don't mind popping their YouTube channel link into the chat here. These guys are awesome. So, all right. Ryan was talking to me like a 5-year-old and scolding me. They essentially said that Jamie and I are not who we claim to be, and that for us to have a podcast is unsafe because it makes people feel like we are safe. Because they are. They're good people. I was read from a phone all of the things that I did. While many of them were based in actual situations, the events were wrong, and things were taken completely out of context. The word creepy and abuse were used in reference to me and my behavior. I was then given the words of what to say and had to apologize, which I was unable to do because my brain was trying to comprehend what was happening. I was in shock and basically went into feeling like I was a 7-year-old again when I got home last night. I was emotionally paralyzed. It was as bad as it sounds. Jamie did a beautiful job apologizing, and I did not have words. I was embarrassed for myself as it happened in front of the team, but I was embarrassed that I was unable to even formulate the correct words to apologize and honestly just feel like a bad person. It's hard to feel so much of what they believe about me is false because they are so convinced that it's real. Looking for the nuggets of learning, which there are many, and somehow have showed up today. Thanks to Jamie and my wife, and we are currently shooting I Love You All. And then I believe there was one more. I think this is probably the same screenshot, but no, it's the same sequence though. My brain was struggling because what I wanted to say and do was run and blow this whole movie up because I felt this was so unjust. And yet the only path forward was to acknowledge her and Ryan's feelings and apologize and take the wrath of an angry husband. Yeah, I couldn't even do that correctly. So he's a very self-deprecating guy. It seems very self-critical, but a very good person, I believe. Yeah, I couldn't even do that correctly. I prayed and prayed and prayed for the words, and I didn't come. It didn't come. The word didn't come. Okay. I prayed and prayed and prayed for the words, and it didn't come. So I felt abandoned by God in that moment. Sorry, guys. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Even though I know that's not what happened. We were told this was the worst experience of her life, and others have witnessed this behavior, and the behavior on our set was creepy. I was emotionally paralyzed, which is something I haven't experienced in years. Rainn, imagine that meeting all those years ago at Soul Pancake with Golriz, but times that by about 100. I spoke to my therapist for an hour, and she tried to get me out of the haze as I literally could not get myself off the couch. I don't know how I will make it through, but I know that I will. And just knowing you're all there for me means the world because even with Jamie here and my wife and family, I've never felt so alone. Putting a smile on, doing my best to lead the crew. I will unpack and process this when we wrap, of course. I apologize for the vulnerability dump. This is one of the few safe spaces I have right now. I love you all, and thank you for your prayers. Wow. That's so sad, dude. I mean, this is a genuinely good man, and just reading that stuff and knowing that he felt it, and never thought that any of us would see these text messages. These were not text messages that were, put out there for the public, right? These were his private conversations with his closest friends that he confides in. And this happened a year ago, right? Over a year ago. A long time ago. Oh my God. It's been like 2 years. But yeah. Just so crazy. Oh man. That's a hard thing to read back. But yeah. Somebody says, let's go to trial, please. I believe that unfortunately, I think that the harassment claims are something that needs to be heard by a jury. I'm not a lawyer, though. Keep that in mind, obviously. So, I can't tell you for sure. But I think that's something that's going to happen. I think the defamation claims, the so-called retaliation, I don't think she has anything. I think that's going to go. And I don't even think it's going to be a summary judgment thing. I think a lot of this is going to be the judgment on the pleadings. So, all right. And remember, she hasn't responded to the judgment on the pleadings yet. She doesn't have to do so for another 4 days. So we'll see that soon. Okay. Anyways, moving back to this. Lively alleged Baldoni shamed her for her body weight. Okay. And then he offered to, after she got sick, she got strep, connect her with a specialist who could help with some kind of medicine, probiotics, or whatever would help. She said that, again, this was something about chastising her for her weight. And they mention here, Lively has not offered any admissible evidence supporting that claim. She did not discuss it during her deposition, and she has not produced any documentary evidence indicating that the expert was a weight loss specialist. Documentary evidence shows that Baldoni discussed Lively's illness with the specialist and not her weight. And we've seen the text messages with that specialist, and that absolutely tracks in their favor. He asked, because she got sick, if there were any probiotics that could help kind of reset her system. And I'm paraphrasing from my memory, so that's not exactly what it said, but there was no mention of helping her with weight loss or her being overweight. So, all right. The addition of sex scenes to the script. In late April 2023, before filming began, Sony executive Angie Giannetti encouraged Baldoni to shoot an R-rated film to reflect the content of the book. On April 28th, 2023, she wrote, "I will update Sony. You are going to try and get as much," and this is what I was talking about earlier, guys. It's more descriptive than I remember, but you are going to try and get as much tasteful hot sex as you can. You find out if we are PG-13, will Colleen be okay, and does she think her readers will be okay? So the concern was that the readers of the book and the author of the book would not be satisfied with the PG-13 version of things, and so Sony was putting pressure on him to get an R-rated, tasteful, hot sex thing going. And Blake knew that because they had that meeting to talk about it. So crazy. Baldoni discussed Giannetti and Sony's suggestion about additional and more explicit sex scenes with Lively and Colleen Hoover. On or about May 4th, Baldoni worked with Elizabeth Talbot, the film's intimacy coordinator, to add specifics to the intimate scenes. He suggested Talbot discuss the scenes with Lively to determine how to portray more sexual intimacy in a manner consistent with Lively's personal boundaries and preferences. So he's been very considerate and very careful with her feelings in all of this. And as we continue to go through this document, you're going to see that he never brings up sex, his sex life, his experience with being violated without consent, unless she first talks about her experience, in which any normal person in that scenario is going to think, okay, well, this person and I have obviously built a rapport to where she feels comfortable talking to me about her personal sex life. So it's okay if I talk about my past sex life in a similar manner, right? So, but I just want to point out that context as we go along, because we're going to see here, he's trying very hard to make sure she's comfortable when talking about these sex scenes and the intimacy they're trying to portray, and talk about her boundaries and how they can work within that. So she makes it very confusing. All right. Such discussion took place in the context of planning and choreographing a sex scene. Lively first volunteered her own personal experience, like I was just saying, before Baldoni shared his. Okay. Baldoni has publicly discussed his prior addiction to pornography on his podcast, which is aimed at male audiences, and in his published books. And if you guys aren't familiar with his podcast, the Man Enough podcast, it's all about And he doesn't like the phrase like toxic masculinity. He feels like that's kind of putting men on the defense. When you say toxic masculinity, you put someone in a defensive mode to where they automatically don't want to listen to you. So he tries not to say that, but Justin speaks to men as if like there's more to being a man than this traditional picture of masculinity. And so when they mention his, TED Talks and books and stuff like that in their complaints, they make it sound like he's some sort of a creepy, predatory, pretend male feminist, but it's really not that. His whole thing is like, it's targeted at a male audience to try to help people heal in a way that men can express themselves and feel confident in their masculinity without hurting women. And I feel so sad for him that he's been portrayed this way. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Here they're talking about Heath and the makeup trailer, right? So he enters the makeup trailer while she's having her makeup removed, and they had a brief conversation. Now, why did he do that? Heath suggested they meet the following day, right? He did not want to go to her makeup trailer while she's getting that stuff removed. She said they can meet at her makeup trailer to discuss the timing for the meeting. Basically, she's giving them no choice because we've seen they have tried to work this out otherwise. And then he knocks on her door. She says, "Come in." She asks him to turn around while he's speaking. Rather than say, "Come back later," she says, "No, just come in and turn around while you're talking to me." Okay. And then Jamie in his deposition says, "As I took a step up, I saw she was leaned back. She looked what I thought was either maybe breastfeeding or nursing. I said, 'It looks like you're busy. I can come back.' As I turned around, she said, 'No, that's okay. You can come in. Just look away.'" So she would not agree to like any other time. And then when he comes in while she's breastfeeding, she's like, "No, come in now." When he comes in while she's allegedly topless or, barely covered or whatever, she says, "No, come in now. We're doing this now." Okay. 2 weeks after the incident and months before this litigation, Lively raised the incident with Heath for the first time. She told Heath, "I asked you to look away, and at some point you made eye contact with me." And a lot of people have been pointing out, how dare the black man, make eye contact with this privileged white lady. And honestly, I try not to bring in like racial undertones or issues where they don't belong, but I feel like this maybe was, given her history and given her past behavior, this maybe was a little bit of a factor. So she clearly looked down on him in some way. So she told Heath, "I asked you to look away, and at some point you made eye contact with me. I'm not saying you were trying to cop a look. I'm saying I asked you to turn away, and you made eye contact with me." Well, the guy had to, at some point, when he was coming in the trailer, be facing forward, and leaving the trailer, be facing forward towards the door. So he had to be, at some point, turned in a direction where they could possibly make eye contact. And respectful men often make eye contact with the women who are talking to them. So what was he supposed to do? As she says right here, she admits, "I'm not saying you were trying to cop a feel or a look. Sorry, a look, not a feel. I'm just saying I asked you to turn away and you made eye contact with me. Heaven forbid the person you're talking to out of reflex makes fucking eye contact with you. It's a respectful thing to do. Most of our parents teach us when we grow up, you're supposed to make eye contact with people when you're talking to them. Jesus. Crazy fucking bullshit here. Yeah. All right. Hey, buddy. Oh, thought you're sleepy. Anyways. While shooting the scene, and we're talking about the birthing scene, Lively was wearing a hospital gown, a prosthetic belly, and a fabric over her genitals. Okay. And I wanted to pull this up to talk about this scene, which she made such a big deal about. She was like, "Oh my God, I was almost naked," and they were doing creepy stuff, right? No. So remember this, Adam Monshine, the actor who played the doctor in that scene, came out publicly and said, "I don't know why she said that. That's not what happened." Adam said, "I'm not going to speculate as to Miss Lively's motivations for mentioning me in the complaint. Needless to say, my experience working with her is very different than the one she described in her lawsuit. Indeed, I was surprised to read her description of the scene. Right. So she said that Miss Lively felt the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend for this intimate role in which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly nude genitalia, right? Nearly nude genitalia was invasive and humiliating. That's not what happened. And so she says that he introduced his best friend. There's no indication that that's his best friend, by the way, to play the role of the OBGYN, as if this was some sort of creepy act. Hang on, sorry, guys. I gotta move that real quick. But Adam came out and said, no, that's not what happened. Hi, Cass. What's up? Hey, darling, was setting up my live and saw you were live, so I delayed and came to join. Oh, you can come in here if you want. Let me know. I'll send you a link on Twitter. Somebody let me know what she says because I'm going to go back to reading. But if you want to pop in here for a minute, I'm going to go for maybe half an hour more if I can help it. So I can go to bed kind of early. So his friend, Mr. Baldoni's friend, let's remind you guys, actors are friends with each other. They work in the same industry. That's not a shock, right? And this guy was a very highly trained, professional, talented actor, and she freaks out about it. Monshine maintains everything occurred when they filmed was above board. In response to Lively's claim that she was nearly nude, he alleges her costume included a full hospital gown, black shorts. So she leaves out the fact that she was wearing bicycle shorts, and torso-covering prosthetic to make her appear pregnant, in addition to whatever personal garment she chose. Monshine further claims that the Gossip Girl alum never complained or expressed discomfort at any point because nothing unusual or improper occurred. It was entirely professional. Jesus. Yeah. I almost forgot like how bad her claims were that he had to come out and be like, yo, what are you talking about? This poor guy probably worked really hard to go through acting school and to get this role, and he's done lots of good acting in his career, and he's just like, I'm totally qualified for this, and he did his best. And she's just like, this creepy guy, Justin's friend, this creepy guy came up. Okay, how about your sister being on the set of the film? Really? Like, we're cool with that, but this guy who's a professionally trained actor who has some sort of relationship to Justin Baldoni in some way, which could be very minimal, comes onto the set and does a good job playing an actual role. And that's creepy. That's creepy. Okay. All right. Anyways, a lot of the themes in this document were that Steve Sarowitz basically was not there, doesn't know what's going on, and she's alleged all these things against him. And so I just wanted to highlight that here. With the birthing scene in particular, she accuses Steve Sarowitz of having been there when he was a non-essential person and no non-essential people were allowed on the set. Now, mind you, as we've discussed before a long time ago, the set does not encompass the entire like area that the film and all the work and all that is like taking place. The set is a very small area. So we've seen at one point or another that creepy guy on Twitter who likes to bitch about I'm such a helpful feminist guy and Blake Lively, please love me. He was like ragging on Justin's friend Melinda for being there and watching the film in a tent outside of the set on a day when the set was closed. She wasn't on the set. She was in the surrounding area near the set, sure. But she wasn't on the set. So when they say closed set, like nobody's allowed on the set, people who were there but they weren't on the set, that's not a violation. And so Steve Sarowitz was perfect description of that guy. Yeah, I know. So Steve Sarowitz, he was only on the set, per these notes, for a few minutes on that day. And on the set means in that exact area, okay? The set area, not in the trailers, not in the surrounding area. Like, he's allowed to be there, especially because he's the person funding the fucking movie. Jesus. Well, now Blake's life is over because Bruce says I'm thinking about not making any more movies with Blake after this. And so now I think that Blake should probably just throw in the towel. All right. Anyways, I don't want to read too much into Sorowitz's role here because it was literally nothing. So it does say that Steve spoke to Adam, the guy we were just talking about, and Adam did not raise any negative, experiences about his time on the set. He didn't know what scenes were being filmed at any given time. I thought this was interesting. During his first visit on set, his one of 2 visits, Sarowitz spoke to Brandon Sklenar. Sklenar, the vanilla person who loves cold Pop-Tarts and unbuttered toast, was effusive in his praise for Baldoni, his directing, Wayfarer, and how he'd been treated in general. Way to go, Brandon. He turned into an asshole after that. All right. Comments that Lively and another actor looked sexy. So this is if anything, I believe this is the most, and I would say in quote unquote controversial of the issues here, because I'll get into it in a second. How about this? On or about May 18th, Baldoni commented that actor Jenny Slate looked sexy in her character's wardrobe, which included black leather pants. Okay. So I just want to point out that this is a set for a film that was very sexually charged. This is not like a typical workplace, and the women involved have constantly, according to their documents and all the accusations that have been made back and forth, were talking about how they wanted their wardrobe to look sexy. Giving an extremely wide berth here. I want to say, if I'm Jenny Slate and I'm being like extremely over the top here, I could understand why somebody would not want to be told by their employer that they look sexy, okay? But this movie set for a very sexually charged film, which was supposed to be an R-rated, film with lots of steamy sex scenes or whatever the Sony rep said, right? I don't think that this is a hugely out-of-pocket comment. I think if somebody said this to me and it made me uncomfortable, what I would do is say to them, I don't like hearing that. I think that makes me feel a little odd. I would appreciate if you don't do that anymore. And them doing that in the first place, given the context that we're sitting in, is not hugely inappropriate. If they continue to do it after I've said, please don't do this, that is harassment. That is a pattern of behavior, and it's persistent, and it's disturbing. But if you are constantly saying to your director, I'm concerned about the looks of my character's wardrobe, I want it to look sexy, and then he says the pants look sexy, whatever. I mean, that is what you said you wanted, and he's telling you, we've achieved the goal of what you said you wanted here. And that's what Blake did with her wardrobe, was saying she was concerned that it didn't look sexy, right? And we've seen these clips now of her saying her shoes need to look sexy. They're foot on the floor or whatever, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But even so, say I'm Jenny Slate and I'm not Blake Lively. And this other woman has been making this big deal about needing the wardrobe to look sexy. And he says, I look sexy and I don't like it. What I'm going to do then is say, please don't talk to me that way. It's inappropriate. It made me feel uncomfortable. And if he never does it again, that's not sexual harassment. Okay? It's not persistent. It's not pervasive. It's not severe. That's not sexual harassment. At most, it's an uncomfortable interaction. I've asked for it never to happen again. He is agreed and politely respected my needs and my feelings about that. And that's that. So there's really not much more to it. Also, somebody says Jenny Slate didn't sue for sexual harassment. Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, moving on from that. Video footage of the incident shows Lively was, and we're talking about the scene where she was in the onesie, right? Lively fully dressed in an oversized fleece onesie at the time, that numerous actors and crew were also present and engaged in ongoing work, that Baldoni's facial expression was neutral and not ogling or suggestive, and that after Baldoni apologized if his remark was inappropriate, Lively responded by saying all good. And that was the bar scene, I believe. And we saw footage of that. I'm not going to pull it up tonight, but yeah. Okay. I'm not going to go through too much more of the home birth. I feel like we've talked a lot about that. Everyone was covered in the point that there was no genitalia showing in that. They were talking about how their vision for the birthing scene in the film. I don't really think that we need to harp on this too much more. We talked about it a lot because she just asked for sanctions, basically saying, I want to see more of your naked wife, Jamie, which is fucking insane, by the way. Insane. But, you know, there's not there's not a whole lot more you can really say about that than what I've already said, which is just like she called it porn, right? She called the video of the baby without genitalia porn. But she's the one asking to see more of this man's nude wife. So she's, in my opinion, kind of a fucking pervert. But that's just me. All right, moving on. Oh, this was one of the worst parts of this, by the way, in my opinion. And I'm going to pull up his declaration so we can go over that as soon as we read this comment here. At number 126. Lively alleges that during the first phase of filming, while riding in a car with Lively, her assistant, and her driver, Baldoni stated that he had not always obtained consent before sex. Okay. Baldoni was not questioned about this incident during 2 days of depositions. He recalls a conversation with Lively in which he told her about his own experience of having a romantic partner go beyond his personal boundaries of consent. So he basically shared with her this incident in which he was sexually assaulted. And she wrote it in a totally different way. Said that basically he said he didn't always get consent before he had sex with someone else. When he's trying to be vulnerable, open up to her, after she shared her personal experience, mind you, that he was also violated in some way. And so he understands how that feels. Baldoni has written about this experience in his published books and discussed in public talks. Lively's subsequent conduct confirms Baldoni's account, and her protections demand she objected to Baldoni referring to. And of course, it's redacted. But Baldoni was not questioned about this incident during 2 days of depositions. That means a lot to me. If this is something they felt like they needed to avoid talking to him about, this would-be huge issue was not asked of him, in 2 days of depositions. You know you were in the wrong. Like, my God, dude. So let me just pull up his statement real quick. Declaration of Justin Baldoni that was attached to the motion for summary judgment. It says, okay, I recall that at some point during the first phase of filming, I was in a car with Miss Lively discussing the themes of the book and the film It Ends With Us. During that conversation, I shared with Miss Lively my own experience of having a romantic partner go beyond my personal boundaries of consent. I have written about that experience in my books and discussed it in public talks. And then, of course, that stuff's attached. And I'll remind you guys, a podcast where he talked about his, I would say that was rape, right? If somebody goes beyond your consent to have sex with you and you say no, 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 and they still do it, I would say that's a rape, right? He had a podcast of him talking very openly and deeply about his experience with being raped by someone, removed because of Blake's accusations. She is a shameful piece of shit, dude. Absolutely shameful. Disgusting. All right. Anyways, that's all we really need to see from that. And like I said, they never questioned him about it in those 2 days of depositions. Fuck you. All right. So here we're talking about Lively and another actor's concerns are promptly addressed before the first phase of filming concludes. I think that's Jenny's. Lively's and Slate's, I would guess. And Jenny Slate already had a relationship with them, mind you. Lively's email did not mention sexual harassment or discrimination or make any accusation that any conduct rising to that level had occurred. So. Does Blake Lively understand towels? Yikes. Anyways. Lively did not contact Wayfarer's HR department during production. She did not file a formal sexual harassment complaint with Sony or Wayfarer. And then they've got emails from Cynthia Barnes, the head of HR, to confirm that. On June 1st, Lively asked Baldoni, Heath, and Alex Sachs into her trailer. Lively discussed various topics, including Baldoni's comment that the wardrobe, okay, not Blake, but the wardrobe for Blake's character was sexy or hot. Not Blake, not Blake's character, but the clothes were sexy or hot, which she said she was concerned about. Heath showing Lively an image of his wife around the time she gave birth, an instance in which Heath entered her makeup trailer while Lively was in a state of undress, an instance in which Baldoni had cried in her trailer over the negative public reaction to Lively's casting, and Heath and Baldoni's practice of hugging other cast and crew members. Okay. And this is like one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. But I want to point this out. And this was from Justin's deposition. It's from the It Ends With Lawsuits Instagram account. And this had to do with the hugging part, right? So he's being questioned, I believe, by Gottlieb. It says, you hugged Miss Lively on multiple occasions on the set, right? He says, yes. Every day? No. How many times will you estimate? And then Justin says that I hugged Miss Lively? Are these hugs, I'm sorry, are they hugs I initiated, or are these hugs that I was a recipient of? Because they went both ways. Hold on. Gottlieb says, you can include hugs that you believe you initiated and hugs you believe Miss Lively initiated. He says, like, love them all together? Share your best estimate. Okay. He says, maybe a greeting and an exit. So at the most, maybe, again, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's my answer to you, Mr. Gottlieb. I don't know. And why the fuck would you know? Okay, and they're talking about Vivian Baker, Miss Lively's makeup artist. And that goes on to the next page. Gottlieb says, are you aware that she testified that there was a culture of hugging on the set of It Ends With Us? There was a culture of hugging. I can't do this. What the fuck, bro? Oh, sorry, I forgot to show you the dog. Hang on. Come here, bud. He's sleepy. Hold on. Butter thinks that's funny too. Oh, look there. Look. Look over here. Oh no, don't look at me. Yeah, look there. Okay, you can go back to sleep now. All right. There was hugging right here too. My dog is gonna file a complaint. Anyways, moving on. Are you aware that she testified that there was a culture of hugging on the set of It Ends With Us? He says, I am now. Are you aware that she said that made a number of people uncomfortable? He says, I find that odd. Gottlieb says, you find that odd. Why? And then Justin says, because Miss Baker was often the one that would run up and give me a hug. And then Gottlieb says, and because of that, you find it odd that she testified that a number of people felt uncomfortable with the culture of hugging on the set. Culture of hugging. With all the things going on, the violent, horrible things going on to women in this world, we're sitting here saying, you find it odd that she testified that a number of people felt uncomfortable with the culture of hugging. Oh my God. What the fuck, bro? What the fuck? Okay. Oh my God. That was so fucking dumb. All right. Anyways, we're gonna try to move on from that. If I can. All right, let me get some water real quick. One sec. It's right here. I'm just gonna drink some. All right, I'm alive. Bruce has solicited foot rubs. Count me in. All right. Let's see. We got this pulled back up. I can't talk anymore about the hugging. I have to move on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm still not over it. Anyways. Okay. On May 30th, Baldoni wrote messages to Lively and Slate separately, thanking them for their work and stating, I was made fully aware of your concerns. I wanted you to know that they are fully received. I hear you and adjustments will be made accordingly. I appreciate your feedback and really looking forward to working with you at the end of the week. And that is a 100% appropriate reaction to somebody raising an initial complaint saying, I didn't like that you did or said that. That's 100% appropriate. That's not a reason to file a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. You're just a cunt. Okay? All right. Neither Lively nor anyone else have identified any other incidents that they believe may have constituted sexual harassment or discrimination. Oh boy, okay. And then one of the themes here was just them saying Steve Sarowitz doesn't have any knowledge of any behavior or anything that happened on the set. I'm going to skim through that because basically it's just saying Steve wasn't there. Steve doesn't know about this. Why are you fucking bothering him? During the filming hiatus, Lively announced a list of protections, and we know about that. Let's see, during the next 2 months, she did not file any HR complaints of note, right? I'm not going to go through that. That's not important. We read about that in the recent sanctions motions. Several of the requested protections were already substantially in place, and I feel like that's important. Why are they bothering Steve? Exactly. Okay. It ends with this movie had already retained an intimacy coordinator, right? She requested a closed set for any scene involving like simulated sex or nudity. Okay. The film's intimacy coordinator had already sought Lively's input on all intimate scenes in advance, and the parties had negotiated a nudity rider that she already been provided. She requested pre-approval of any scenes involving physical touching, simulated sex, or nudity. The offer letter, setting out the basic terms of her participation, already provided there would be no nudity, simulated sex without artist's prior written consent, and negotiation/execution of a nudity rider. Lively requested any footage involving any nudity and/or simulated sex previously shot without the nudity rider in place could not be used. And then on 170, they put it right here. There were no such scenes. Like, it didn't happen. There was nothing to be applied there. Lively requested that no one enter her trailer while she was in a state of undress. And I wanted to highlight that one because it's like, obviously we saw above, she basically forced their hand, refused to meet at any other time or discuss it at any other time. Said, come in to her trailer while she was undressed. So, right. Lively requested an A-list stunt double approved by herself to rehearse and perform any scenes depicting rape or sexual violence. The offer letter, setting out the basic terms of her participation, already provided that Lively had approval rights over any double. Okay. Other requested protections implicated Lively's own conduct. Lively requested there was to be no spontaneous improvising of any scenes involving physical touching, simulated sex, or nudity. We're getting to a place where I want to point out basically the title of this video, right? On May 19th, Lively oversaw a scene she herself added to the script in which her character kissed Baldoni's character in every take, although there was no kiss in the script. Let's take a look, shall we? And I don't know if this is the one they're alluding to or not. If it's not, then there's more than one. So, mind you, this was not in the script. This kiss was not in the script. And it ultimately wasn't shown in the film. In the film, this scene happened in the apartment, and it was different.
Come here. She doesn't know what to do with herself.
Camera set.
And background. Action, Blake. June.
I promise you, you have absolutely nothing to be scared of, okay? I've done this surgery so many times, all right? All you gotta do is close your eyes and you're gonna be great, all right? Bye, Emily. I'll see you later.
Hi, I'm so sorry.
Wait, what are you?
No, I just.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, you forgot this.
Wait, what? No, babe, this isn't mine.
I know. I know. I happen to love you too.
All right, cut.
That's great.
Oh my god, guys, I've been on a tangent for the last 60 seconds. For the last 60 seconds, I've been screaming. Anyways, I was saying, look at his face at the end of this cut, right? Hang on. Look at his face one more time after they cut, because he's like, oh shit, she's going to make this a thing because it wasn't in the script, even though it was her action, right? So he's smiling in character, and then just watch his demeanor change so quickly. It's like, fuck.
All right, cut.
That's great.
Like, that guy is not fucking happy. Poor dude. Because he even said, and I want to point this out, hang on. Right here in this exhibit that I wanted to point out, go to number 51 here, and we'll zoom in. It says, hold on, let me do that real quick. Intimacy. Not sure what to do here. She's moved this scene from the bedroom into the kitchen now, and this is talking about a different scene, but the premise is the same, right? Which takes away from the intimacy and how I was planning on shooting it. I wanted her to run into the kitchen from another area to sell the misdirect that it was an accident, and I know what they're talking about, unfortunately, because I've seen it twice. She has removed kissing, which is fine in the end. The last thing I want to do is kiss this woman. Does that sound like a sexual harasser to you? Or does it sound like somebody who's being harassed? Yikes. All right, bear with me, guys. We're about halfway through here. Move back. Anyways, I just wanted to show that scene because that was not a scripted kiss. He was forced to do that because that's what she wanted to do in the moment, right? She's fine grabbing Henry Golding's balls without asking. She's like, I think that's what my character would do. She's fine planting one on Justin Baldoni when she thinks, oh, that's what my character would do. But then she freaks out when he does something scripted ahead of time, doesn't touch her. Oof. Just a mess. Dude, just a mess. Every scene I've seen sounds, he looks like he's dying as soon as he says cut. He really does, dude. Yeah, he really does. That couple that with like the text that he's saying like, oh, I'm crying because my wife and kids just left when she's being all creepy. Like, there's just this poor guy. He was in such a mess, dude. It really is such a mess. Somebody says, did Brucey, is this Grey's Anatomy? I just missed that. But I was just watching Grey's Anatomy before we started this. Anyways, I'm going to go back to this document here. So we'll get into some more. I need to forget what I just saw. So, holy shit. That was terrible. Ugh. God. Okay. Video footage also shows Lively explaining to a group of male crew members, and we saw this one, I think, is also on that website if we want to look at it, why her boots are so sexy, because they're just bone-hitting wood. And that's when I'm, thinking of what's sexy in a woman, I think her shoes are thin. Is that in the script? No. No. Okay. My shoes are sexy because they're just bone-hitting wood. That, again, I don't know. My personal definition of what's sexy in a woman is not my feet are on the ground. You know what I mean? I feel like that's pretty basic. But okay. Let me see if I can find that clip. Okay. And if you guys haven't been to docketupdates.com, you should check it out. They've got all these videos on there. It's where I found the Sarowitz recording and all that stuff. Here's the clip I was talking about just now.
Can I just sit over this chair right there? Just get the closest distance. I know it seems so ridiculous. I don't think it's anything.
It's not.
reason they're so sexy is because it's just like naked foot like Cinderella, but there's no platform. So if your phone is hitting wood, it is.
Baby, I don't think that Cinderella's shoe was a sex object, first of all. And second, her shoes were definitely not bone hitting wood. They were high heels. So, yoinks! All right. Anyways, Lively also commented on the physical appearance of other actors in connection with the project, but before and after issuing these demands. So they're just like basically talking about how she was harping on people's physical appearance all the time, which is true. We've seen that dancing footage, right, where she said she was being harassed and he smelled her neck and said all this stuff, which was not true. But she also insulted his nose, basically telling him to get a new one in that scene. Bruce says shoes are sex objects. Sounds like someone has a foot fetish. Well, you would know, sir. You would know. All right. Okay. Lively requested there be no physical touching, including hugging, because the culture of hugging is so bad. Her on-set personnel and or her employees. So now Miss Baker, if she runs up to Justin and gives him a hug, that's not allowed? Alrighty then. Lively herself had initiated hugs with Baldoni, okay, as had several members of her staff. More broadly, all staff members had engaged in large... And this is an unfortunate reduction. I'm not going to lie to you, because it could say a large anything. It could say a large orgy. I don't know. I don't know, dude. A producer on the film observed that, well, I'm going to pass on this. Okay. Okay. Video footage shows Baldoni hugging male members of the cast and crew as well. Okay. Yep, we saw those footage. That footage, sorry. Lively requested there were to be no discussions of personal experiences with sex or nudity, which again, she initiated. Lively had previously volunteered to Baldoni details of her personal sex life. Okay. Lively's list also included several items that were wholly unrelated to her sex, gender, or physical appearance, including demands that Baldoni not speak to her dead father, mention his own religious beliefs or ask for hers, or have private multi-hour meetings in Lively's trailer with Mr. Baldoni crying, as well as a demand that Lively receive notice of COVID exposures on set. Okay. The defendants were pressured to accept Lively's demands. We kind of know about all that. I'm not going to roll through this too much. Yeah, I feel like we've harped on that to death. Lively and her husband make additional demands during a meeting at her home, which we've seen a lot about. Okay. 7. Hold on. Okay, I think I read through that how I wanted to. All right. During the meeting, Lively read a longer list of demands off her phone. And that's why they called the 17-point list the 30-point list, I think. They never signed a 30-point list, right? They just signed the 17-point list. Okay. Which was still stupid, but it is what it is. Okay. Right. I'm going to skim past this stuff because we've heard a lot about that. The attendees were stunned by the nature of the meeting, but they made efforts to assuage Lively's anger through neither Heath nor Baldoni admitted any wrongdoing. Okay. And we read the text earlier that I was talking about where he was talking about how sad and confused and depressed he was at that time. Right. Around the time Lively provided her list of demands, reps from Wayfarer spoke to counsel, who advised there were no events they felt would require an investigation. So she, again, reaffirmed there's nothing here that requires an investigation. After making her protections demands, Lively revised several scenes to be more sexually charged. No surprise there. She was like, you're a pervert, sign this or else, and give me control of the film. And then as soon as she got control of the film, she was fine making everything all sexually charged. Because she's fucking creepy. All right? The second phase of filming, including all of Lively's intimate scenes, proceeded without incident. Okay. Remember, there were no intimate scenes in the first phase. Okay. Lively used the influence of her famous friends to take over the film entirely. On or about February 22nd, she told Sony she would not agree to promote the film unless she was permitted to participate in the edit. Yep. So we know all about how she took over the film. A lot of this is redacted. We pretty much know who the famous friends were. There's Hugh Jackman. There's Taylor Swift. There's, what's her fucking face? The one dating Bradley Cooper. Fuck. Gigi Hadid. That's it. Okay. Lively urged, and of course we can't see this, as well as her famous friends. Lots of redactions there, so I'm not gonna get into this too much. She demanded changes to the film's credits, and that's removing the credit that said "It Ends With Us" was a film by Justin Baldoni, and that is so fucking sad. This poor guy. I mean, I'm gonna read through his exhibits, his depositions, his text messages tomorrow night, where we can see how sad that really was. But damn. Okay. Lively also insisted Baldoni's image be removed from marketing materials and the film's poster, which ultimately just featured Lively herself. What a cunt. All right. Lively and her husband took steps to harm Baldoni's reputation. Right. On or about July 17th, during the filming hiatus and before presenting her protections demands, Lively and her husband unfollowed Baldoni on Instagram. And then they, of course, got all the other cast to do that eventually. 1 sec. Sorry, I'm just checking my phone real quick. My parents are, like I said, in Europe, so I want to make sure they're good. They text me at odd hours sometimes because it's 11:11 here. So, after the conclusion of filming and leading up to the premiere, Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds openly attacked and disparaged Baldoni, seeking to tarnish his reputation in Hollywood, including among their famous and powerful friends, as well as with fellow cast members and in the media. For instance, and then a lot of this is redacted. Most of it's redacted. So, Lively and others at Sony were aware that the media, including social media, was picking up on Lively's efforts to alienate Baldoni from the cast and film, while generating adverse publicity about Baldoni. For instance, and then of course it's redacted. So, this is how they were not allowed to be on the red carpet during the premiere. They had to wait in a basement and view from a separate screen, which was sad. Baldoni, Heath, and Wayfarer retained a crisis PR firm to assist and advise them in the face of growing adverse media attention. We know about that. So there was Jen Abel, who worked for Jones Works at the time, and then they hired Melissa, Nathan, and Tag first. And then they hired Jed Wallace to do social media monitoring. These crisis PR firms, they pitched them a bunch of ideas and services that they could do, but Wayfarer also ultimately chose not to go on the aggressive. They just wanted to monitor and defend. So we don't have to go through this too much. I feel like we've talked about that a lot. And we're going to see a lot of that in the exhibits when we go over them tomorrow, so I'm not going to harp on too much of this. Hang on. Okay. Heath, Abel, and Nathan did not want to add fuel to the fire by prompting additional adverse media. In particular, they told Stephanie Jones, not to contact the press about Lively. Upon learning that Jones had done so, Heath wrote to Jones, and I think we've seen some of that, but this is redacted, so I won't speculate too much on what's there. She continued to reach out to media even though she wasn't supposed to, and then ultimately there was the complaints about the Van Zandt thing. I'm going to skim over this part with Street Relations and Jed. Jed has now been dismissed from this lawsuit again after the amended complaint. So, and then additionally, his lawsuit against her in Texas was dismissed also for jurisdictional issues. Are we headed over to Cassidy's when Lauren is done? I can actually set it to redirect you guys, so I'll do that. Here, let me do that right now, and then we'll keep reading. Let's... Cassidy. She might have to turn on her settings for redirect. Or if it's not set up yet, that could be why. Yep, got it. Okay. Yeah, it'll redirect you guys to Cassidy as soon as I'm done here. But I'm going to rip through the rest of this first. Okay. No problem, Cassidy. Right. Jed Wallace has testified that his firm did not surreptitiously spread negative information about Lively and has no ability to do so. Right. Lively suffered backlash, of course, and then it's talking about like her history. They said they didn't contact anyone. Nobody was really doing anything. It was happening organically. It was talking about the New York Times criticizing New York Times doing this was kind of funny. I didn't see this before, but criticizing her efforts to cross promote the film and her personal hair care and alcohol brands, as well as Ryan's gin. Okay. On August 13th, Nathan privately observed to Abel that there was a completely unsolicited story from TMZ. Blake has a huge ego. Justin was liked by many cast and crew, and this is her ego being bruised. Okay. And then Abel says, not from any of us. It's not coming from us. So, all right. Prior to these events, Lively had been criticized for, and then you can fill in the blank there because she's been a heinous bitch for a long time. So I hate that I ever loved her work, but I did. All right. Let's see. Prior to these events, Lively had been criticized for problematic on-set behavior while working on the TV show Gossip Girl. Yep. And then I wanted to point out down here, there's something about Shasti's video. I can't remember where it is, though. A negative sentiment towards Lively accelerated. They basically confirmed it was not bots or fake accounts. This was happening organically. They confirmed to Justin, no, we would never do this. There's a struggle where it's kind of maybe even unbelievable the way people are turning against her, but they are organically. She's blown herself up by her own actions. All right? Okay. Baldoni privately discussed with Nathan that he had no intention to make Lively or anyone an outcast and told Nathan he was praying for Lively and Reynolds because that's the kind of guy he is. I'm not. So I just think she's a cunt, and I think that she should eat the cost of his lawsuit, but whatever. Or his defense. Okay. And then down here, I think, is where the Shasti thing is maybe mentioned. During this period, defendants believed that Lively's press team was spreading negative information about Baldoni and using bots. That tracks. Okay. Here's a not-so-surprising part. Lively failed to uncover proof that defendants spread false information about her. During this litigation, Lively responded to interrogatories seeking identification of the ways in which defendants supposedly seeded social media content to increase the negative sentiment towards Lively. Well, Blake, if only you had gotten my bank account information, then you would have all the proof you needed. I've been paid billions of dollars to smear you. Just kidding. I just think you're a cunt. All right. Anyways. Nearly half the incidents Lively identifies are devoid of any negative content about Lively and merely claim that defendants either suppress content about Baldoni or enhance positive content regarding Baldoni. So fucking what? That's what all PR firms do. The stuff she's complaining about, they're doing like standard PR. They haven't done anything special to defame her in any way. It's like nothing they said is untrue. If they said it at all, it's mostly coming from TikTok people because everybody knows these days. People on the internet take on a life of their own, dude. Like with this stuff. It's like they find everything because they're interested in it. All right. Lively also points to incidents in which certain defendants spoke to the press about Lively herself. None of these incidents involved sharing any factual falsehoods about Lively. Instead, they involved pointing out true facts about Lively or her husband's conduct or sharing opinions of that conduct. Oh my God. What a mess. What was 290 again? I marked it here for some reason. One sec. Oh, no, I think we're good. Okay. I'm really interested to see what the redacted stuff is. But okay. Oh, here's the little bump thing, and that has to do with Shasti Flaw, like I was just saying earlier. Lively has not put forward any evidence to suggest the little bump video is not genuine, or that defendants had any contact with the reporter in the video. Dude, if this lady was out here accusing some innocent guy of this crazy stuff, and I had done an interview with her before that I had on video on hand where she was heinous, I would absolutely release that for free without prompting. Why the fuck would I not? Like, for the rest of Blake Lively's life, if she does anything and tries to accuse any random content creator or reporter of something, I'm going to come out and be as loud as possible and say, hey, Blake Lively asked for 2 years of my fucking location data because she didn't like what I said about her online, and I had nothing to do with her lawsuit. She did this to herself, and this is going to follow her, as it should. So, whatever, man. I mean, I don't know what the point of asking for my shit was. I mean, maybe she missed the culture of hugging, and she was like, what's Lauren's location data so I can hug her? But I don't want to fucking hug. Just go away. Anyways. Sarowitz was not involved in the marketing of the film and did not review any of the marketing materials for the film created by Wayfarer or Sony. And this is mostly on the theme of Sarowitz really didn't have to do with much of this. So yeah, I'm not going to read through too much into that. Let's see. In her interrogatory response, Lively has identified each instance in which the defendants purportedly spread negative information about her. Okay. The interrogatory response does not identify any specific instance in which Sarowitz himself, my bad, was involved in circulating any information about Lively whatsoever prior to this litigation, and only one instance in which he weighed in on press strategy concerning Lively. Right. Okay. And then a lot of the rest of this document is sealed. So this is talking about Sarowitz's call with Claire Ayub. I went through that in depth. We listened to basically the whole recording together. We know that he was just talking about defending the studio. He did say like a comment about defending the studio, like Israel, was fighting Hamas. And the thing is, like, as much as some people might be sensitive to those comments, as much as you might feel offended by or disagree with those comments, they weren't violent comments. He was making a statement about how he would defend the studio, how passionately he feels about it, how hard he would fight to defend his studio in a metaphorical sense, not a literal sense. So, I'm not going to read too much into that. We did spend a lot of time on that before. So, okay. Lively obtained documents through a sham subpoena, abusing judicial process to serve her own ends. And we all know about the Van Zandt, right? On or about October 1st, taking advantage of New York rules that permit discovery before issues have been joined, and the fact that no defendants have been named who could thereby invoke the court's process on their behalf. And then it's redacted, but, we know what this is. So such requests were made even though the complaint did not refer to the film or Jones' works at all. Of course, they served that subpoena upon Stephanie Jones, who didn't object to it in any way, shape, or form, even though she knew that she should. Okay. Let's see. But she didn't because she was already in cahoots with Blake Lively, allegedly. I mean, I say allegedly because I have to, but logically speaking, that's what happened. The filing of the lawsuit and the issuance of the subpoena created a legal mechanism by which Lively, through Van Zandt, could ostensibly claim to legitimately obtain documents Jones had found on April's phone. Absent a court's compulsory process, Jones could not simply turn over records she found on one of her employees' phones. Right. Okay. Van Zandt voluntarily dismissed the case without any defendant ever appearing in the action. And then there was the New York Times article that came out. Right. They told the New York Times that that Baldoni abruptly pivoted away from agreed on marketing for the film to emphasize his support for survivors of domestic violence. That statement is false. Through the administrative complaints she provided, Lively and or her agents told the New York Times and other media Baldoni and Wayfarer had not used nudity writers or intimacy coordinators on set. That statement is false, and that's super embarrassing for her because that's very easy to prove. Through the administrative complaints she provided, Lively and or her agents told the New York Times and other media Baldoni had suggestively told Lively her neck smells so good during a shot. Sorry. Video captured of the scene demonstrates that statement was false. Through the administrative complaint she provided, Lively and her agents told the New York Times and other media Baldoni had routinely degraded Miss Lively by finding back-channel ways of criticizing her body and weight. You mean when he politely asked a trainer what your weight was so he would know when he had to lift you because of his back problems, and when he privately and silently, quietly asked a specialist to help you with probiotics because you had strep throat? Cunt. Lively negotiated every aspect of her work, but never reached agreement, so she never did sign that offer letter, to my knowledge. Or, sign the agreement. Yeah, the ALA was never executed, so I'm not going to read through too much of this, but they did note Lively never sought to add Wayfarer as a party to the draft agreement. So It Ends With Us movie was on the agreement, but Wayfarer Studios was not. Lively refused to sign the ALA. Okay, and then down here we have Lively never signed the ALA or the inducement. She sued without providing notice and an opportunity to cure. Her representative sent a cease and desist addressed to certain defendants and others. The letter was not addressed to It Ends With Us movie. The cease and desist letter alleged that the addressees had breached the protections for return to production and or Lively's contract writer. The cease and desist letter did not allege any independent breach of the ALA. right? And I think that's all I had notes on, guys. Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to go through that document. Hi, Lauren's parent. Are my parents here? I don't think they're here. Unless my mom's awake at a weird time, but she could be. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, like I said, I just want to go through that document. We'll go through the exhibits tomorrow. As soon as I end the stream, it's going to redirect you to Cassidy, who should be starting in about 5 minutes, actually, so that's good timing. But let me see if I can get my dog back up here one more time. I'm just hanging out with my dog for this weekend and Monday, because he's going to keep me company on my birthday. So, yeah. His name is Butter. His full name is Butterscotch, but you can't really tell too good from the lighting, but he's got butterscotch ears. Also, I like to name my pets weird stuff because if I name them weird stuff, like my last dog's name was Muffin and his name is Butter, then it makes people feel stupid when they yell at them, which I think is funny. So yeah, no, my birthday's on Monday, guys. It's not my birthday today. But yeah, just gonna be the two of us because my parents are in London. So, all right, we gotta go. This is breaking the hugging culture. Okay, I gotta go, guys. All right, go tell Cassidy hi from me, everyone, and I will talk to you tomorrow night. So, bye. Oh wait, I gotta read these real quick. Zach, thank you for the $2. I was okay. That's personal. I would love to talk to you about that some other time. Zach, thank you again for the $2, and then again at 5:30. Oh, Zach. What the fuck? Mikhail Life, thank you for the 5. When you watch Andy's video about how Justin invited a disabled/dying fan, yeah, that's right. The fact that he was in the basement hits way harder. Yeah, that's pretty terrible for Blake to do that one too. So, all right, thanks everybody. I will see you tomorrow night. Bye.